Hey, okay, so very excited. I have a body scan script, so we can do some mindfulness body scans. I want to talk a bit about body scans first. So the reason that these are awesome and I fully recommend them is just how much they've helped us over the last, I think it's been 2 years since we started doing them. And then with Reset, we've been doing them like in a guided way rather than just on our own for the last like 8 months-ish. And body scans are very beneficial, really helpful for becoming more embodied. Like if you've been traumatized to the point where you're just very disembodied, like for us, our experience of the world was very much like it just felt like we were here, like we just a floating disembodied head, but couldn't really feel my face, couldn't really feel my limbs, like walk into shit all the time, had no like proprioception. It was really difficult to intercept emotions in the body because we just couldn't feel our body. It was really difficult to do things that took like balancing and just constantly bash myself on doorways and stuff because there was just not that awareness of like the frame of our body. It just felt like we were bleeding amorphously out into the world around us with no like real feeling of like the clothes on my skin or the structure of my body. Or I'd miss hunger cues and like wouldn't notice when I was thirsty. And then yeah, it was really difficult to have a read of any emotions we're feeling because you pick these up as physical sensations in the body, but if you're disembodied because of trauma, you just don't really pick them up. So there's like loads of things that throughout our entire lives we just haven't had that connection with. And then we learned about body scans and we started doing them. And over time it's built this incredible awareness of like this ability to intercept different emotions in the body. So now I'm like I have much more awareness of my emotions. It differs for different like people in here. Obviously, I think the more trauma somebody holds, the harder those things are to engage with, but it's helped all of us. It's just at different levels that we can connect with the body and like that we can connect with the emotions we're feeling. And it's been so helpful. So like emotional awareness, you know, actual body awareness. So like I walk into shit a lot less now. I have much more dexterity of like even just being able to do that and having them align that I would have missed. So like there's loads in the proprioception and in the ability to intercept emotions and in the ability to intercept signals. Like I notice when I'm slightly hungry, I don't have to be starving to notice. I notice when I'm slightly dehydrated. It's taken time to like build, but it's a large part of that is body scans. And we would just do them like, I think for a while we were doing them every day and then probably every week. We probably still end up doing them about once a week now, but also probably more than that because here, there and everywhere we'll like use the things, we'll pull the tools that we've learned from it to use it when we need it. So probably throughout most days we'll do something that is checking in with different parts of our body. And over time it's built this idea of a frame. So like I can feel my body right now. I know what shape I am, which really helps with the distorted self-image and depersonalization because I can feel myself as I'm talking and as I'm moving, and it gives me a really solid sense of self and of like at least of how this body looks on me. I mean, I look nothing like this body inside, but I know what this body looks like and it's no longer like a distorted image. The body dysmorphia isn't nearly as bad as it used to be. I think watching myself back on vlogs has helped with that as well, but at first that was just really triggering difficult because what I saw on vlogs would warp too. So there's loads of things that over time were really difficult to engage with in the beginning and then over time have built to give us this array of tools to use when we need them. And once your body starts to feel like a safe place for you to inhabit again, it makes it so much easier to do things like pull yourself into the present out of flashbacks and feel a sense of value and self-worth and capability and security and safety in the present moment, which makes it really like so much easier. It's never easy, but it's so much easier to come out of flashbacks and to prevent flashbacks through sensory grounding. And you kind of become more aware of your body generally throughout life. So instead of walking around like a disembodied head with no sensations, I'm like aware of how the temperature of the air feels on my arms. I'm aware of how my dress feels on me as I sit. I used to like end up not noticing discomfort or pain, and then suddenly I'd be like, oh, my whole leg is asleep, or like I'm really uncomfortable because I've been pressing against this corner for ages. And that doesn't happen now, because the second I lean somewhere uncomfortable, I'm aware of my body posture, I'm aware of discomfort, and it helps me give myself the ability to change it. So it helps us to like prioritize our needs emotionally and physically and like physiologically. It's just mad helpful for so many things. I think probably even more things than I've gone into and remembered. But it's got to the point now where it's more normal than, like, it used to be our norm to be totally disembodied, not feel things. And now it's much more our norm to like have an idea of where my body ends and the environment begins, and I should just be able to feel myself as I exist, as I move through life. And so there's probably things I'm forgetting that it helps with that I haven't mentioned, which is really cool in a lot of ways too. It makes me feel a lot better, like with self-confidence, and just that feeling of stability and security in myself is like massively built from having this feeling of substance, of like feeling more like a person as well. So really massively cool. So these are like all the benefits. It's so worth it. I can't even sell it enough. But it was really challenging at first. It was a very difficult thing to engage with, because if you're a trauma survivor, then you know your body hasn't historically been a safe place to be. And a lot of the defenses that we're now built with, that we have developed to protect us through trauma, are doing the opposite. It's like dissociation from the body, disembodiment, you know, depersonalization, all the things that disconnect us from being able to feel our body were there for a reason. Even if that reason is no longer standing now and it's a safe place to be now, we still have, like, your body literally stores trauma, and you have the associations of what it feels like to be in your body, and they can sometimes be really uncomfortable and unsafe feeling associations. So when we first started doing them, it was really difficult to do it at a level where we felt enough safety to do it. We couldn't, like, for a start, we just straight up couldn't access, like, the way I feel my whole body as a fluid, joined together, like, network of muscles and bones and a frame right now is not how it used to be. And when we did body scans, it was like we'd very much just be able to pull our focus on like one body part at a time, and I'd be able to be aware of the body part I was focusing on, but in a very hazy and numb way, and it would periodically like bleed out into numbness, so I couldn't tell where the edges were, or we'd have to like be wearing tight clothes or like touch our limbs to try and work out like where the boundaries between our body and the environment were, and try and like help our body and our brain to learn those things. And even like going through the day, our default was to not feel any of this and to just be like observational head with no feeling of our body. And then every so often we'd remember the body scan and we'd check in and we'd go, oh yeah, like, what am I feeling? Can I feel anything in my chest? Can I feel anything in my stomach? And for a long time it was like, no, not unless it's really extreme. And so, you know, we could end up really injured because we could be walking around in pain and not even realize until it was really extreme. But then something that made it difficult was when we started doing it, we have a lot of body stored pain, like from trauma. Your body literally stores trauma and suppressed emotions, like do something at a neurobiological cellular level where you just, cells store toxins because of it. And I really need to look up the exact scientific data because I've heard it so many times, but I can't remember how to. I know the concept and I can feel it, but there's like a science behind it. So when we say your body stores trauma, it's like it literally physically stores trauma. And you can have implicit memories in the body. So that's like instead of remembering something, you'll get the sensation of it repeating. And sometimes this is a form that a lot of our flashbacks can take. So when you're doing a body scan, there may be areas of the body that, for now at least, are uncomfortable to focus on. Like for us, there were, like, I'm not going to go into triggering detail, but for instance, sometimes we could feel like somebody's hand holding our arm, and it was very triggering and uncomfortable. I mean, we could physically feel it. And one thing we learned to do to combat that was to place our hand there and like do it at a pressure that was different. So not like really tight or anything, but just as a supportive presence. And then we could remove our hand and like feel the sensation of letting go, and we could like remind ourselves that it was on our control now and that it's our hand and that we're safe and things like that. And then another thing we learned to do through mindfulness was to shift our focus to areas that felt safe and comfortable. So if we encountered any area where there was like an implicit memory stored where we could still feel it happening, we would do breath work, help to regulate our nervous system so that we get our rest and digest back online and communicate safety to our body. And then we could shift our focus to an area of our body that felt safe and comfortable. Usually like the tips of the fingers is a good go-to to people. Like if you do that, you may feel this tingling sensation. I always feel like this slight tingling sensation, and it reminds me of being really little and like reaching out for some clay or some Play-Doh or something, like the desire to touch, to interact with things in my environment. But you know, it's just about learning what's comfortable for you and what's safe in your body. For us, it can feel quite safe to move our focus to our feet, to feel the ground supporting us. There's still like, with this much trauma, you may encounter like a lot of triggers in various places, but it's just about learning to be able to bring safety to areas that have historically felt unsafe, while being able to allow yourself to dissociate if that's what you need at the time. Like when we were doing it, we'd go in and out and we would just let our body melt into the environment when we needed to. We wouldn't like try to force focus or try to force any feelings. It's really important not to force anything and to still respect your capacity for what feels safe right now without having an expectation of like, I have to be able to feel all of my body immediately. Like this has been like 2 years of work to be able to, and even then I think there's some times where it's still like a bit numb, but I can at least feel my frame, and that's really cool. And like as a whole holistic person, instead of just like I feel this limb occasionally, I feel this limb occasionally, and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that can make it challenging, and it's just really important to check in with yourself with what feels comfortable, with what feels safe, not go in with any expectations, not have any sense of coercion or control. Like your body, your nervous system, yourselves, you all need to have a sense of agency and freedom to choose, and it's really important that we respect that and give ourselves space for whatever comes up. So if we just like check in with our body for a second, it's really overwhelming, that's okay. And just, you know, trying to find acceptance of what's come up and then go do something that is really grounding and soothing to you. It could be watching like a comfort movie, it could be art, it could be going for a walk, it could be music, it could be a hot bath, it could be anything, you know, interacting with pets. But it's really important to be able to like go in and come away whenever you need, because while it can feel uncomfortable, it should never feel threatening or unsafe. And sometimes for some of us, because of the trauma, it just does automatically feel threatening and unsafe to be able to feel our body and to be embodied. So we have to titrate, which is like, you know, adding one tiny drop of, say, food colouring to a whole pot over time to have it build in a way that's sustainable, while we can feel enough safety to match the discomfort we're feeling. You never want to go, it's not about like going, oh, I want it done now and I'm going to do it really fast because then my body will get used to it, because building a sense of safety and stabilisation just doesn't work like that. So this is so worth it, and also it can present challenges, and it's really important to go at a pace where you can maintain a sense of safety, even if it's like getting a bit dysregulated and then coming back to safety, and getting a bit dysregulated and coming back to safety. And like when we were doing the body scans at first, sometimes we'd like shift our awareness to try to feel our body, and sometimes it was really hard to feel anything, and we'd have to do some sort of grounding exercise at the same time, like even if it was just touching our hands, to just even be able to feel a sensation there. And maybe that would feel really overwhelming, so then we'd stop and we'd just go do something that was soothing. And then over time, the distress tolerance builds, and the safety that you bring in with you becomes a disconfirming experience. So because I wasn't forcing myself to spend time longer than felt comfortable, I would always build the association of now it's safe to feel my body, even if it was only for a split second, because I was doing it at a manageable level where I could maintain that or keep coming back to that. And that's really important, because that's what you need to build over time, the counter experience of it being a safe place now. There may be just certain experiences where it feels safe to engage with your body. Like maybe there's something that's really grounding to you and always a really fun experience. Like for us, it was much easier to feel our body on like a roller coaster or something, because the sensations to a lot of us, not to all of us, but to some of us, that was the safe environment to practice this. To some of us in the bath, to some of us really not in the bath, to some of us, you know, it varies so much just within our system. It's going to vary so much from person to person. But just sitting in a room and doing this might be a bit too overwhelming at first. So maybe being out in nature, in a field, feels like a safer place. Maybe being like with a loved one close by, maybe completely on your own. But just experiment gradually, move very slowly, and always try to build that sense of safety as you go, or keep coming back to that sense of safety however you achieve it. That's really the important part, I think. And then over time, it gets easier to be able to engage with feeling sensations in our body more often and over more of our body as we go, and for longer periods of time. So we didn't try to just like be embodied all the time. We did at first, but it did not work. But once we learned that we have to titrate experiences so they're like sustainable, then it was like we'd just check in every now and then. We'd remember when we were feeling an emotion to try to feel it somatically by being like, what sensations can I feel? Maybe in my chest, in my throat, in my stomach. What do they feel like? How long can I sit with them before it feels like I have to move away? Allow myself to move away when it feels like I have to. You know, again, it's just really important to give yourself and your whole body that feeling of freedom and agency and autonomy to be able to move in and out of sensations and focus without feeling like you have to sit with something for longer than feels safe. And over, the last like 2 years, and then also over the last 8 months, even though we were only doing it periodically, like every now and then we would do a body scan. And then for a while every day we would do a body scan, but that was just what was okay for us. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It's just whatever works for you. But so we weren't like trying to be in our body consistently throughout the day. We were just doing it periodically whenever we could. But over time, it helped us to kind of be able to soften into being with sensations and being able to feel our body and being more embodied. And it just builds consistently around the times when you're doing it as well, so that in the end, we've ended up just being more embodied as a default state. We'll get lifted out of our body if we start to dissociate, or if we go into the fight-flight response. I can lose a bit of touch with how my frame feels and how it feels to be in my body, and we have to like come back to it in moments of stress and anxiety. But generally, right now, for me and for a lot of parts of us, I won't say for all of us at all, it's more default to actually be embodied and feel our body. And that was just built over doing body scans here, there and everywhere whenever we could. So it does build throughout your life generally, even though you're just doing it in sessions. I think that's it for the foreword and for the potential barriers and solutions. Things we faced that made it uncomfortable and meant we had to be very careful about how we built safety and stabilisation and paid attention to what felt right. And as always, you know, just do what feels right for you. And sometimes we don't know what that is, and we have to learn. We've learned a lot through trial and error, which is why we make the suggestions we make and why we make the videos we make, because like we spent a lot of our lives just living in dysregulation and the fight flight response, going in and out of shock. And if anything we share can help people to learn about themselves in a safer, slower way than the trial and error that we went through, then that would be very cool. So now I'm going to do the body scan script.